Brian has a fire alarm.
Oh,
You have to evacuate?
Luckily, I'm on the 38th floor of World Trade Center 3.
Oh, Jesus.
Then again, this is World Trade Center, so I think I should go,
You
guys.
should maybe go, yeah.
Is there anything to be concerned about in the building? Are you back in that building or are you just bailed?
No, I just took off. What am I going to do? Like rescue people?
Yeah.
Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, a show about detecting patterns in media technology and culture. I got chased out of World Trade Center 3, but there's always, where there's a will, there's a way. I shoved aside various people, not sure what's going on in that building, but if it is something serious, don't worry, I'm safe. Let's get started. We have a big show. It's not a summer show. We're going to argue about arguments. And we left off where, before we're going to argue about field notes, which everyone should join at pvanotes.com and its new user interface. We got a voice note. First of all, Troy, explain this new functionality to PVA Notes.
Well, we always wanted to have a call-in line, just like an old-fashioned radio call-in line. So we wired it up, and now people can call in, leave comments, thoughts, criticisms, whatever. And those get dropped into the system. We read them, we think about them, we meditate upon them. This week we should cut one in. We have one from a gentleman who I don't know, who's fairly active in the community. Do you know him, Brian? It's JLW.
No, he's a mystery.
He's a bit of a mystery.
Hey, Brian, Troy, and Alex. This is a cool feature. Thanks. I'm just wondering where we're at right now with authenticity and how it relates to social media. Like, I feel like we're at a moment where an unstoppable force is meeting an immovable object, where influencers and the authenticity that they supposedly bring is being bought by companies for that authenticity, but at the same time, AI is scaling to the point that people are starting to distrust the content created in that space. And so on social media, where those two things collide, like, we're at an inflection point, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Because for me, like, I've always looked at social media as a place to connect, but it's basically turned into the yellow pages as media strategy, and it's getting harder and harder to give a shit about what's going on those channels. I mean, yeah, it's really good at figuring out what I want, but do you see fatigue in the future as those two sort of opposing ideas collide in what is functionally our main communication channel as a society right now? Cheers.
Appreciate that voicemail very much, but I could maybe summarize it a little bit, Brian. I think that the question is, as AI makes social content easier to fake and maybe less trustworthy, and brands increasingly commercialize, influencers for their authenticity, do you think people will get tired of social media as a primary communication and discovery channel? Like, are those things going to, continue, like, erode that media type that we've all started to rely on increasingly for everything from, news to, entertainment?
Yeah.
So that's the question. I don't know. For clarity, it seems like, just background, I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. Influencers worked because they felt like people, and we kind of liked that reaction to, institutionalized media. Brands bought that feeling. Now AI means you can kind of manufacture something similar. Meanwhile, social networks are not social anymore. They're algorithms driving, kind of feeds of content that are not related to your network at all. I think the trust problem is something we've spoken about. Social media was very, very good at discovery. I don't know what replaces it. And the truth is that there is still a huge amount of attention there. Like, UGC has, in the creator media economy is doubled since 2019. Social media has overtaken TV news. Social video is 25% of people's screen time, something like that. So I don't know where that where that leaves you guys, my take on it is we're in this big debate right now about the connection between like provenance, like who made something, and authenticity. And I think we're in the middle of that debate, and increasingly people are going to gravitate towards, people will still want to be entertained, and I think AI can do lots of things on them, just a basic entertainment. It's merit as entertainment, but I think premium moves to more human, harder to fake, to things that are, verifiably human: events, tastes, group chats, podcasts, newsletters, all that. And I think the big thing that will change is that new mechanisms for discovery have to emerge. And I think the great challenge of our time is, we always talk about the scarcity of attention. Now I think that belief and trust are more scarce than attention in the next round. So that would be my take on the question.
May I give my take, Drew?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. This reminds me of a time I was in Cannes, sashaying down the Croisette, and I came across a large beach installation from Philip Morris promising me to lead me into a smokeless future. The social media failed. It's a complete failure. We're coming to terms with that failure every day. Meta is on trial for a reason. They're facing over $1 trillion in damage. These are cases that are built on the tobacco industry lawsuits, and rightfully so. Social media is dead. It's gone. It did not work. It's now some weird algorithmic machine that is based on manipulation. And the same thing with influencers. They've been co-opted, and even my creator friends. And so there's a complete loss of trust there. And I think that's why it's inevitable. Let me finish. That's why it's inevitable that we will end up, right or wrong, retreating into more private spaces. Look, if you see me on LinkedIn, I'm there for marketing purposes. I just want to be totally clear. That is what I'm there for. I'm going to tell you all about TRB Audience Summit, September 17th in New York City. Got a great lineup. And various other wares that I have to flog. And that's the reality of all of these platforms. So I understand, yes, new discovery mechanisms will emerge, but they are not going to be created by Mark Zuckerberg in one of his bunkers. He's got a new one, by the way, in Ireland. Because these are people that created the problems in the first place. I am not turning to them to create the new distribution channels, social media.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Same thing with the sharing economy. Remember that bullshit? Alex, you were part of that. Give me a break. People are sick of being sold this nonsense, and it all emanates from Silicon Valley. And they keep pushing this stuff, and then they're like, oh, gee, why does nobody trust us anymore? I wonder. That's my take. Alex?
One last, just a clarifying thing.
Troy wants to jump in here into that.
Well, I think that I think those are good points. I think to be, completely dismissive of, I don't know if social media is UGC. I don't know if social media is boutique content creation or influencer content or creator content, but that is alive and well. That is alive and well on YouTube. It's alive and well on Instagram. To completely write it off as saying it's dead is disingenuous. We have massively disrupted industrial content creation, and I don't think that that's going away.
I don't think it's going away, but okay. I was talking to Anna and last night, and I was like, oh man, you always want to be right. Yeah, I just said this little offhand thing. I open up Instagram and I'm in this you're married to a Slavic person when, and they'll always tell you you're right. Now, look, that could have been coincidence. This is what social media has become. It's a massive surveillance economy under the guise of connecting you to family and friends. People are not as dumb, even if they can't articulate it, as a lot of the true elites, which to me are the people who are running this oligarchic economy. I'm fresh off 3 weeks in Europe. Me. I'm fully socialist. No, Alex, I came back to this country and there's blueberries killing people. When I left, it was just explosive diarrhea. We're making jokes about it. Now we got deadly blueberries.
Well, this
Get
is
me
why
back
when
to
I
Europe.
said the deadly blueberries and explosive diarrhea is why I also I'm okay with GDPR. Some of the regulation is going to be helpful. some of the regulation is going to be bad.
I like the caps being attached.
Brian, I don't know. I'm stuck between you two because I agree with both of you. Look, yes, it's not, it's a surveillance state insofar as it's just the best advertising apparatus. I thought that would make you happy, Brian. These companies are just advertising companies. And the idea of talking about social media or creative content is just a way to avoid saying that they're, like a mass scale advertising platform with content inserted in the middle of it. And to Troy's point, I think these things are doing fine. It's no longer the problem is that the nomenclature is no longer correct. This is no longer social media, right? It is kind of entertainment with content made for free by a horde of teenagers. So there's nothing social about it, right? The feeds went from being 90% your friends and family to now maybe it's 8%, people and the rest is content that is essentially made for free on a giant advertising platform that is, hyper efficient. Look, even Zuckerberg hates it. Even Zuckerberg wants to be anything else but what Meta is today, right?
I think the biggest fear those guys have is that AI content hollows out their platforms and they become much less attractive to real humans.
I think that is optimistic because hearing some of these folks speak, it's also they can't wait for AI content to replace human content so they don't have to give anyone a penny and deal with all the bullshit because, once the content is free and generated, a lot of people are seeing this as a surface for advertising. And hey, the more content you have, the more that surface, bigger that surface is. I don't know if it's valuable to think through as to whether or not people are going to still consume this content. People are still going to log on to TikTok and spend a ton of time on TikTok and watch all sorts of trash.
Sure, people are still going to eat blueberries too, blueberry ice cream. Sure.
Right. To me, but the thing that I try, because I'm in the entertainment business, right, and everything that we are making, even this podcast, is going to be affected by AI, right? By feeds, by all this type of stuff. To me, it's less about what are people going to consume versus not consume. Is also what are people going to be willing to pay for, right? Where is value going to be generated? Because that's what really matters when you're trying to build a business. It's not which is why it's not whether or not people are going to still consume TikTok videos. It's what are people willing to pay for? Which is why, when I hear Disney talking they kind of want to use AI to let you make Mickey Mouse into TikToks, I find that very dangerous because they're kind of diminishing the value of their content and kind of adjusting to this fake reality that everybody just wants free shit. That's terrible.
I think that we throw around terms like AI slop and how the platforms are overwhelmed by it. Meanwhile, Instagram serves me exquisite content very often. YouTube does as well, and X has never been more vital. So I think that
X being vital is kind of a big take. I'm never on X. I don't miss it. I find that everybody is on X.
Yeah.
Dario got drawn out of
words.
his library and weighed in on X. That was good to see.
I think the audience shifted on X, Alex, but I think as a platform, it's more relevant than it's ever been.
How so?
100%.
You guys sound
We've moved beyond
addicted.
the threads.
You guys
debate.
sound so
We've moved
addicted.
beyond it. We've moved beyond it.
Oh, really?
I talked about the Fediverse yesterday, Alex. I thought about you.
I hear about Truth Social more than I hear about X on the news and whatever I'm at because Trump posts there. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I do think, yes, Troy, you're right. There's great content going on everywhere. I think that there's also great communities, right? If you open yourself up to it, there are Discord communities, there are Patreon communities, there are still bulletin board exists. I think a lot of what people are missing from the social internet exists on Reddit. I know that for, white middle-aged men wanting to yell at someone, X is also very exciting to go to.
That's bigoted.
It's much more than that. Yeah. I think the one certainly the
Coldplay concerts of social media.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Now you've gone too far.
The biggest
Maroon
casual.
5.
I like colors.
The biggest change in this media transformation is the blurring of lines between content and advertising. And so everything is branded content. And everybody's shilling. Brian's shilling over on LinkedIn, and Alex
He just
is
shilled
shilling.
Alex,
Alex, you're shilling on Instagram. I
was
see you.
that
I
was
see
just
you.
the
of course.
And the idea that there's a separation outside of news is gone. So I don't know if that's a problem, but that happened.
I texted people this week to come to TRB Audience Summit. I felt a little dirty doing it, but
Yeah.
don't hate the player, hate the game. Let's talk about arguments. I think we're losing the art of argument, and I think it has a lot of downstream impacts. The Economist posted this is such a nerdy summer fight. They had an article this week that was a quote unquote hit piece against noted MIT economist Darren Acemoglu. And it quoted not only Larry Summers, who's been canceled because of his Epstein ties, but also like Noah Smith, who's an economics blogger, but not an economist, and some anonymous economists taking swipes at Acemoglu. Now, Acemoglu is an interesting figure because he's the one on the side of this AI stuff is not going to drive the massive productivity gains that people say it's going to. He's basically on the side of labor. This is a ripoff for labor. It's an important argument to have. What I noted afterwards is he went on X, of course, and said, this is a hit piece. And he didn't actually respond to it. And then in all the replies were some variation of, I'm sorry you're going through this. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. If you're going to be in the public sphere, the way we get to truth is through arguments. Economics is a social science. It is not a real science. It is not a hard science. It is not physics. It is done through arguing. And so we have to argue it out. And we have to argue it out in all kinds of phases. When we're thinking about how AI is going to impact economy and society, these are arguments that need to be had. Now, Silicon Valley, on the other hand, has decided they want no part of having these arguments. They want to retreat to their safe spaces of quote unquote new media and not have the arguments. Well, let's see how that has turned on, right? AI is as popular, as I like to say, as a rash. It is less popular than ice. So wonder why that is. Data centers are becoming a bipartisan political issue. The National Republican Senatorial Committee in Ohio said it is at risk of becoming the defining issue of the midterm elections. And meanwhile, on the other side, we have Silicon Valley going on their podcast with other VCs, talking to VCs, and blaming it on the Chinese Communist Party, on blue-haired activists with those septum rings and all other sort of things, instead of going out and making an argument. So they're losing. And we need more arguments. We don't need less. And people are like too sensitive to having arguments nowadays. And I think they're not thinking through that this is how democratic societies come to some kind of conclusion about how they're going to organize themselves. So I am making the argument for arguments. What do you think?
Nice one. You're always on the side of hostile journalists that irresponsibly wield their power against people that fit their liberal agenda. And this is simply about power. And I think it's hard to deny that there was a period of time where mostly liberal media could use their platforms to manage or to influence the public dialogue in a way that they wanted. And I think what has happened here is that the power has shifted to, I think, anybody who wants to make the argument. You make the argument. It's fine. If someone whines about, a hit piece, the reason that people whine about hit pieces is because when someone takes you down with a brand behind it, particularly when the accusations are of a moral nature, it can completely destroy your life. And so I think that one needs to be very careful about, just saying, well, you're in the arena, so you should just, suck it up. I think that what's happened is the democratization of media has let those Silicon Valley guys create their own podcasts, and that's fine. And you can listen to those podcasts, and if you don't like it, make your own fucking podcast.
Oh, I totally agree. Did I say otherwise? Also, let's be real. You also have a bee in your bonnet, understandably, over what I believe you would call a hit piece that was done about you back in Book One.
Kinda, but it was like, I mean, I think it was really influenced by the sort of cultural environment of the time, and it was largely bullshit and whatever. But like,
if you had a podcast, you'd be able to make your argument back. So
yeah, I'm too much of a wimp to do that.
No, you're not.
I don't know what we're arguing other than, you're saying that a guy complained about a shitty, Economist piece on X. Fine, go ahead. Do it.
I'm using it to try to get into the idea that what I see out there and what is happening right now is that we are retreating into, and algorithms absolutely drive this, into these little safe spaces where we do not have good faith arguments. We have debates. Debates are rhetorical flourishes. They're nonsense. It's never been a better time, by the way, to have been on the forensics team. Glenn Greenwald said that he got a full scholarship to college for debate. I had no idea such a thing exists. The podcast world is filled with these debaters. David Sachs, a debater. That's totally different than making arguments. Arguments are you make your case publicly, and then we sort of stress test it. I think that's totally different.
Yeah, but that's no longer, because arguing, needs some boundaries and constraints, right, for it to become productive. The problem with it today is the way communication travels and kind of the way it gets amplified. And so if you're on the wrong side of an argument, and then, or, if you kind of if the argument gets picked up, it gets amplified. And when it gets amplified, somebody could still get their life fucking ruined, Like Jonah Hill, right?
He's doing jujitsu.
Yes, exactly. So you heard about that, right? And it wasn't particularly an argument. He just made a joke that he could kick anyone's ass. It was obviously in jest when he said it, but he's been completely ganged up on by the internet, who just waiting for an excuse to pound on this guy because he's not likable. And I think that
pause your notifications.
You're literally in an echo chamber where you say something and it echoes back to you so loud that you can't even have the fucking argument. That's why people retreat to safe spaces,
Or look at the most hostile media market in the world, the UK.
Wait, is it? Is it?
I think so. Oh,
is it anymore?
Yes.
I think you're looking to the past. I mean, now they're super sensitive to. They're the number one. I'm so sorry you have to go through this. They're the tops of it. They're sending cops out if
there is not another country in the world with the hostility driven by tabloid culture, and you see it in all kinds of ways. Not the least being the treatment of the royals, or someone
England,
more
or
recently,
or soccer players, or
Harry's going back,
or this tragic case of Jason Arday. You guys are
the Cambridge professor Jason Arday, who all indications are he's a garden variety fabulist, and obviously he got pulled into a lot of the debates about academia. And yes, he is or was a black professor. He apparently took his own life. He died last week, and that set off all kinds of recriminations. Now, during the investigations over his academic record, he actually had an injunction against journalists from pursuing these stories. Now, I think it is an interesting question about whether, if you enter into public life and becoming the youngest Cambridge professor, is that you're going to have scrutiny, for sure. I think the scrutiny was fair. I'm always on the side of speech.
Yeah, but I think that Alex's example of the amplification of it was unbearable for him. He couldn't imagine living in that world.
Yeah.
Then I don't think he should have been in that world. And that's the whole point of this thing. The guy didn't have the qualifications, apparently, to have been in this. And that was the problem.
Right. But I think we're talking about the scale of things, Brian, where if we go back to an argument needs to have enough room for it to exist. Right. And I can tell you that there are in gaming where, you're dealing with people who are extremely online, have a lot of time, there are people who get on the wrong side of an argument at any point in time or say something that requires a tiny bit of nuance to understand. And, their businesses get ruined. The game gets review bombed or, up to a point where somebody doesn't like somebody and they get swatted. Like this stuff has real world circumstances when you pit.
Okay, swatting is against the law. We already have laws to take care of that. It's harassment.
But
Done.
But the internet has made arguing, it's worked itself in two ways, right? Because it is just like magnet to the algorithms when there's any type of controversy or disagreement, these things get amplified. If you're a normal person that just wants to, have an argument, even if you're in the public eye, you might just start a fire that is like really not what you want to deal with. But because, all the way to like, you got mental health issues to, you just don't want to deal with it or the argument won't get anywhere. On the other side, if you're shameless, or if your brain is so wired up that you don't feel any shame, then you can ride that wave of attention and you can say the craziest shit you want because you know that's just
not arguing. You're conflating like all kinds of
No, but what I'm
different
saying
things.
is that's the environment we live in. Like you can't argue.
Well, too bad, so sad. I don't know. Maybe everyone in Silicon Valley should feel bad about that, or maybe they should pay $1 trillion damages for creating this.
He came back from Europe, like just wearing the GDPR T-shirt, and just like, I'm not saying any of this stuff is good. I'm not saying any of this
You know what I
stuff.
like in Belgrade? They do the arguing on their buildings because it's a graffiti city. And so like they argue about the direction like directly on the buildings, whether Kosovo is Serbia, the student protesters are either blockadary or they're winning.
Right.
And, I like open societies, and I think that argument is necessary
doesn't
in open
work on the
societies.
internet anymore.
And I think incivility is a feature, not a bug, of the United States political system. So, did John Ossoff go, quote unquote, over the line by bringing up Natalie, the president's human printer aide? I don't know, but he's starting an argument that this guy's focused on the wrong things. And I think it's an argument we need to have.
Those are all good. Hey, I'm French. You guys live in New York. I think we should just have more arguments in public. Like, and I see it in California a lot. People are too nice, except when they're in cars. Just say.
I love.
Brian,
I
when
like,
you see
I like
somebody
New
with
York
a mouse-
aggression over the Silicon Valley nonsense.
No, you should have walked up to that woman today.
With
What
a
the
mouse.
fuck are you
You're
doing?
doing, yeah. Eat shit and kick the table over.
Everyone in Silicon Valley is trying to grin fuck you like all the time.
But what's this anti-Silicon? I mean, I'm not like pro Silicon Valley here, but like I feel like you've been totally like Serbian pilled, and look, I get it, man.
I've been smoking cigarettes. I got slipped that beer by my mother-in-law. Yeah,
Americans that go to Europe are to socialism as like what teenagers that like that get into atheism are. They can't stop talking about it. We know, we get it. It's nice.
Do you know what's an argument I think we need that we're about to have is over these flock safety cameras.
Ooh.
They are a big issue. The Washington Post had an article about that. They've deployed a network of automated license plate readers through these cameras. They've got 120,000 cameras across 6,000 communities, 20 billion license plate scans a month. Now, it's used by law enforcement in order to catch bad guys. They caught missing children. They've found missing children, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, also, by the way, some cops end up using that to stalk women and all kinds of overreach. And I think also people just find all this stuff creepy, and it is really good. It's a really good political issue. Flock's CEO basically says this is an inevitable downside and that he's just about catching the bad guys. He said, we're not going to change humans, and humans make bad decisions. It was interesting to me because I heard him first on an All In podcast. Talk about the way to make an argument. Go on a VC podcast. You're definitely going to win over the public that way. This is a needed argument.
Or the person listening to it can make decisions, right? You know what you're listening to. Make your own decisions, right? Don't wait for the podcast guy to tell you what to think. This is a very complicated argument. I want to go back to the flock thing.
Well, that's where we're on.
The stuff that we thought was kind of benign, whether it was a cookie click or our online profile or a shot of a license plate with
Third-party cookie.
Yeah, AI makes harmless data dangerous, right? It turns, it was cool when they sold it to a couple of municipalities. Now you have 190,000, cameras around the country in 49 states, and they're all connected, and they're all connected to vast data stores. And now we have real surveillance. And I think it's a weird time because like you can make we're in this, to get the bad guys argument. I get it. Right. But like we always, convenience in our world, in the digital world, always beats privacy until you realize that you've given up something significant. You know what I mean? It's like we give away location, search history, purchases, and suddenly the algorithm knows everything about us. And the same thing is starting to happen in physical spaces. And so like, do I want people knowing where I'm at all times because there's a bunch of flock cameras? I can see why people are pissed off. It's the beginning of something really bad because like, the question isn't does the camera exist? It's who gets to use the camera.
But yeah, that's all. We're going to be able to find all of that data. I mean, like it just takes a subpoena. And like, let's be real here. We haven't had a terrorist attack in this country in a long time. And I wonder why, like the Snowden revelations, we sort of memory hold all of that. The government, I'm pretty sure, is pretty deeply involved in violating our privacy every single which way until Tuesday. And I don't see how privacy survives in an AI era. I think you'd have to go completely off the grid. Yeah. I think Alex has it right. Make room for me in your bunker. I take back what I said about Silicon Valley.
That's all right. Like
I love the sharing economy.
Europe has actually oftentimes more, London is one of the places in the world with the most cameras tracking your movement.
Super creepy.
Yeah. We've kind of become used to the fact that there's a government who watches us and watches over us. And that's a trade-off that people seem to be ready to make. So it's going to be interesting. Those flock cameras are being vandalized, everywhere right now. Apparently it is also because they have 64 gigabytes of RAM in it, and that's worth money. So.
Well, one thing I would say on a personal note, I get a lot of speeding tickets and I get a lot of stop sign tickets. Yeah. Well, because there's cameras now everywhere in Brooklyn.
Well, yeah, but can you just not stop?
I mean, come on. It's like 25 miles an hour.
I've seen you type messages. You don't have time for anything.
You're a badass. Speeding through Brooklyn.
Yeah. I'm going to have to hop off, guys.
You can take your hearts. Well, we're not allowed to say the hard stop. Troy banned that. This will give us an opportunity to talk programmatic advertising while Alex is away.
All right.
Yeah.
See you next week.
See you later, Alex.
Ciao.
Troy, I was surprised. I wasn't surprised because I think this actually makes sense. And this is a little nerdy media stuff, but NBC News is turning over its programmatic display to Taboola, Alex's favorite company. Basically, they made Taboola the exclusive outside vendor for all automated display ad sales across NBCnews.com, Today.com. NBC's own sales team will continue to sell basically its premium video and direct display. I think what's interesting in this is the consolidation. Instead of, going through all the open web and its LumaScape of various vendors, they're just keeping it simple and saying, here, you take this stuff. And this is as display becomes, frankly, just less important to the future of these businesses. I see this all the time. That's why, companies like Raptive see an opportunity to go upstream. They would always be the sort of long tail of web publishers, but now they're saying to big publishers, hey, we'll take over all the programmatic stuff. And to me, it's testament to where the open web is going.
100%. I think it's a really important sign. There was a time when the open web was a threat to, established media companies. Broadcasters never really took it that seriously because the revenue on the open web was minuscule compared to what they'd bring out on TV, in TV ads. But to just completely hand it over to a company like Taboola, I'll reserve judgment, just signals that the medium is an afterthought. Listen, we all know, anybody that's been in media knows, as goes monetization, so goes the media. And if the monetization of that content is not top of mind, strategic, significant enough to matter, and you just hand it off to a third party, it's sort of, it means that the product will just continue to atrophy.
Yeah. And these businesses, look, I see it all the time. They want to talk about events. They want to talk about licensing strategy. They want to talk about all kinds of things. 10 years ago at all of those freaking Digiday publishing summits that I did, it was just nonstop programmatic. Now, these publishers built up big programmatic ad teams, and, the various vendors wanted to wine and dine them and whatnot. And we were absolutely the facilitators of that racket, 100%. The game has just moved on. And so simplifying it by saying, hey, you take over all of this stuff. We're not going to figure out, we're not going to have hands on keyboard and have a trillion vendors that we're going to swap in and out. It makes all the sense in the world. So
yeah, and I think what it forebodes is 5 companies owning all of the inventory on the open web, either through a network position or an interface, or someone like Taboola that's I presume they're making commitments to NBC.
Yeah.
And then the company that can bring the most data and kind of algorithmic precision to that will take over that advertising. In some ways, I think that's probably a big reason behind all of it, which is, Taboola sees a lot of people across all their positions on web pages, and they can probably do a much better job at creating value.
And last point on this, Taboola stayed very focused on performance, and all of this remnant display is moving to performance. You have to be zeroed in on performance, and that is a data game. You have to be all in on it, and they're always going to do it better on an individual basis. Any publisher is not going to be able to compete, to me, on performance. They just don't have the data. They don't have the capabilities.
That's it for this episode of People versus Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.